minutes. And so I was like, I didn't even wait for the show to end. I just went and found it. And I could get 3 free sites on it, which was great. So I'm like, I tried it out before the show was over. I had a site up. And I was like, yeah, I never even looked at the MAMP thing again after that. And then because I'm a developer, I needed more than 3 sites at a time. So it didn't even, sometimes it hurts the pocketbook to throw the money down for something. I didn't even have a problem, like I have a problem at all. And I use it almost consistently, especially to avoid the cowgirl coding or whatever it is, because I can just, use all-in-one migration, pull the site down, import it into my desktop server, and quickly get to the back of the site, the database, or the front end of the site. The user experience, everything is just so pleasant, and I really appreciate it. I really appreciate that piece of software.
And did Marc slide the $10 under the table?
No, no. People would ask me. I do this for people who just don't do rando stuff. I could be a professional affiliate speaker if you. If there's something good, I will tell you.
That's awesome. And I think for most people that are new to WordPress, when you look at your hosting plans, you have to go with one of the higher tiers to get staging built in.
Yeah. So, well, here's the interesting thing I do too, because in our WordPress meetup, it's a lab. So people will come and they'll have this really ghetto site that's up live somewhere, and they're like, I don't like it, I don't know where to start. Or they're building something live and they didn't even have discouraged search engines off. I mean, it's bad at this point. And the only thing that stalled us was like the internet at the place where I did the meetup. But usually within about 10 minutes, everybody's got their version on their computer. And I said, this is how you get to your site. Boom, we've installed your site. Now go and play. And they got this. And so I even use it in meetups. It's that easy.
Awesome. So with that, we'll turn to Marc. So Marc, we talked about Alicia just saying the praises, but what would you consider the biggest advantage for folks to use desktop server as opposed to trying to develop something live on their site?
Well, of course, there is a security and safety measures. When you're working locally, you also don't have to worry about your site being hacked because it's local, and so you can deal with all of that. It's just an efficient way to run your workflow. If you are serious about your site, it's one thing if you're building your site online and you have no visitors, but the whole idea of having a site is to have visitors, and you don't want people visiting you before you're live. So we created this, and when I say we, I actually mean Steve created this in 2011. I like to throw myself in the we because I'm great at taking credit for things I didn't do. So, and the whole idea was we were the first ones to create a local development platform that is specifically designed for WordPress use. So, and it's not too, I actually find MAMP to be a very decent, robust program. So I have nothing against it, but it's not developed and designed for specific WordPress users. The other thing is that we focus on is it's not just about the software, it's about the service. So we like to think of ourselves as the workflow experts that are kind of like your silent partners. So when you run into an issue, because every host is different and you're going to hear all kinds of things, we're kind of like a buck stops with us kind of company. So if you run into problems, for instance, with deploying your site, which is a built-in feature of desktop server, we're what we call server agnostic. Some of the others out there are very specific to their web hosting, whereas we're server agnostic. We don't care who your server is. Our deployment tools should work with them. And if they don't, we'll help you get it deployed. So the idea is to just have that peace of mind that you can meet your client's expectations and continue to do the work that's making you money rather than going through the brain damage of losing money and going from, making however much per hour to half that to less than minimum wage to getting to the end of it and saying, oh my goodness, I lost money on this deal. And so we focus on being a service provider that has some pretty awesome software is kind of the way we look at ourselves.
Have you ever dealt with the situation where someone says, hey, I've crashed my site? Have you offered it as a solution? Do you have any worst case scenarios or horror stories that you can share with the group?
I have so many worst case scenarios. I don't even know where to begin. We have people that literally, I don't want to go as far as to say should not even go near technology, because that would be rude. And I think everybody should have technology in their lives. But we do have people that are very, very unfamiliar with how things work, and have done some incredible things where sometimes we're in support and we're looking at what's been done, and we've said, I don't even know how they did this. And I'm sure that, developers do that too. When they look at someone else's code and something just magically works, and you go in and you look at the code and you're like, there is no possible way this should work. We've all been there. And so we have cases like that. The one story that I like to share that is probably the worst case scenario for me was, speaking of Milwaukee, I'm from Milwaukee, and my parents were visiting, and they always came out to visit when my kids have a birthday. It was always a big point to come out and visit for their birthday. And part of the deal was we would go to Toys R Us, and they'd get to pick something out, and the grandparents would buy something for them. And this was on a Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning. And I go on and look at my phone, and I look at Twitter, which is completely blown up by this guy who is totally bad-mouthing us in every way, shape, and form, because he sent in a deployment for us to deploy the night before. And between the night before and the morning when we woke up, we hadn't even touched it yet because we were sleeping. His live site had gotten completely destroyed. And so he made all kinds of accusations and all these things that we did and all this. And so I spent my time at Toys R Us on my phone, literally emailing back and forth with this person. And let's be honest here, there's always these things you want to say going on in your head. And then there's the things that you're putting out, to the customer, and this ended up being something that went back and forth for about 4 hours, which kind of ruined my whole day with my kids and my family, because I'm going back and forth. And I end up getting Steve involved and all these people involved, because I'm like, look, I can't do anything. I'm not in front of a computer. I'm on my phone, but we got to figure out this guy's issue. And what it actually had turned out was, after about 3 hours, Steve had figured out that this guy had also hired a team from China to work on his site to do some things. And they had gone in and blown the site up. And we actually ended up being the ones to go in and fix it, because we are, like I said, we're a kind of a buck stops here. I don't care how you're talking to us. I'll look between the lines and say, what of here is valid and what needs to be done. And what ended up happening by the end of it was, I did have to be rather blunt with this particular customer in order to get him on board with helping us try to determine what was going on. So we had to get him past the accusation point and get him to the, hey, let's try to fix this thing. Let's work as a team here to figure out what's going on. Mm-hmm. And then the minute that we said, okay, we discovered that your site's been visited by someone in China. Do you know anything about that? And then he totally confessed everything. Wow. Everything was on the table at this point in time. And then he was extremely apologetic, and then he became one of our greatest fans for life after that. So we are very, very customer service oriented, and I think that that's one of those things that people don't realize how important that is when they get a software product until something goes wrong, and then it's the most important thing in the world. And I'm not sure that that answered your question, Joe, but
Oh,
that
it
was a
does.
worst case scenario
Oh,
that definitely stuck in my head. And I just want to say one more thing. I know that I'm going on long. I do tend to talk a lot. Alicia, that was actually me. That was on that WP water cooler episode, and it was my 8-year-old son. So
that's great. That's great. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I know for me, the situation that I mentioned at the beginning, it was the same thing. When he had gone in and made these changes, he said, "Oh, I didn't do anything." And I went in and looked
yeah,
at revisions, and I saw his
yeah,
name in there a million times. And I was like, "It's not really to point a finger of blame. We just
right,
need to walk it back and figure out
right.
what was changed that caused the conflict." So,
Well, and in WordCamp Milwaukee, I don't know if there's one online or not, but I have a presentation I did using that particular use case on how I walk through a customer service issue and read between the lines. I've been doing online customer service since 1996. So I've gotten to be very adept at being able to read between the lines of what's really going on, what's driving this customer to say the things that they're saying and things like that, and getting to the point and turning them around. And most of the time it's fear. I mean, almost always the reason that they're being abusive or anything like that, it's fear that's driving them. Fear of losing money, fear of losing a client, fear of not having an education on what's going on, fear of just being in the dark, all these things. And so when you can read between the lines and kind of take the emotion out of what's being said, it makes it a lot easier to get to being able to service the customer and get them where they need to be, because ultimately that's what it boils down to, getting your customer where they need to be, whether sometimes you have to drag them kicking and screaming to where they need to be. And but that is that's what it boils down to. How do we get this customer where they need to be? Whether they're happy with us in the end or not, it doesn't matter. We have to get them to where they need to be because they paid us, they trusted us to do that for them. And so that's a very big part of our operating policies.
awesome. And I think that's another thing that attracted me to your product is that I know you guys, and I know you guys bend over backwards to try to help customers. We have a question. Jason
Okay.
wants to know, when you're working locally, how do you deal with plugins that require a license? For example, he's using WooCommerce, name your price extension on a site. When he transferred it to local, it's asking for his license. Any advice for him on?
Yeah. One of the unfortunate things about the way some companies do licensing is if you have licensing for one site, you have to go through the headache of transferring that license to whatever your local domain might be. And then when you put it live, you have to transfer that license back. And most plugin developers will let you. Some of them will say, oh, you only get like 3 license transfers. Most plugin developers will allow you to, if you email them and say, hey, I was working local and, I need to change the license back, most of them will allow for that. I have found, I've never actually run into a single plugin developer that has said, we won't do it. And I realize that that's a little bit of extra work. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating that, that's the way that the licensing works sometimes. But yeah, that's been kind of our experience. I don't know if anybody else has any better suggestions. I can tell you that that's what we've had to deal with.
All right. In terms of the product, I know you mentioned a little bit about the history. Why don't you walk us through, you mentioned desktop server has been around since 2011.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit more about the product for those of you that may be interested. I know Alicia mentioned the 3-site thing. So the free
Correct.
version
Yeah.
offers you what as opposed to the premium?
Okay, so the free version allows you to manage up to 3 sites at a time. That's not saying that once you have 3, you can't do any more, but you do have to delete one to create another. So it's managing 3 sites at a time. It's not a 3-site limit, hard limit, and then the software. It's not crippleware, in other words. And the other things that are that come with the premium package is that you do get premium customer service. And I will tell you, Greg Franklin is in charge of our customer service. I think some of you probably know Greg. Um, I don't know how he does it. You know, he handles, I would say, 95% of our customer support. Now, part of it is because we have a ton of documentation, we have a ton of YouTube videos and things like that. But he manages most of that. You get premium service, which means that when Greg wakes up in the morning, the first thing that he does is he goes and he hits the premium customers first. And then it's not that you don't get any service with the free version, it's just that you're lower on the queue. We try to get through all of our queue every single day. So you're going to get your service no matter what. The other thing is with the premium though, you do get deployment capabilities. The free version does not have deployment capabilities. So you have to come up with either another solution or you upgrade to the premium. Unlimited sites, you can create as many as you want with the premium. You can share your website via either ngrok or locally for like mobile phone testing and things like that with the premium. And then you get the assisted deployment functionality or service. So if the deployment functionality that comes with Desktop Server Premium doesn't work, we'll do the deployment for you. Most of the time, if you only need to do that once in a year, it's a yearly subscription. If you only need to do an assisted deploy once in a year, that in and of itself pays for the subscription, but also the amount of time that it saves. You also get we have always kind of been like innovative in what we do with our local development platform. One of our most innovative functionalities is the functionality of what we call design time plugins. And what a design time plugin is it's a plugin that gets installed or it functions on every single site that you create locally, but when you ship it live, it does not go with it live, okay? So we have a design time plugin, for instance, called the bypass login design time plugin. If you have that active, you don't need to know username and password credentials in order to be working on the site locally. You can get into the WordPress dashboard by bypassing that with just the click of a button. That is a huge time saver. It's probably my favorite design time plugin. And then when you ship the site live, it automatically just doesn't go. We can obviously see why we don't want that plugin to be live. And we have a few other design time plugins that are premium only. And up until very recently, premium only was the only one that included DSCLI, which is a WP CLI on steroids kind of CLI command interpreter. It is now included in the free version. So you have all WP CLI capabilities with all your sites, and those are design time plug. That's a design time plugin too. So that doesn't necessarily go with the live site. And you help support my family when you get premium. So, you know, so I appreciate that.
Awesome. I know one thing for me, MAMP was a little, even though it was sort of easy to set up, there were still some technical things that you needed to know to get up and running. How easy is for those that don't know, how easy is Desktop Server to install and get up and running and get a site up for testing?
Well, I'll tell you the same story that I told on WP Water Cooler, which apparently sold Alicia right off the bat. It was when I was living in Milwaukee, and my son, Eli, was 8 years old. He knew that Dad worked in software, but he didn't really know what I did, and he didn't really care. He's an 8-year-old. And I came home with Desktop Server. I put Desktop Server on a thumb drive, and he came down. I said, bring your laptop down here. So he brings his laptop down. I said, here's a thumb drive. See if you can figure out what it does. That was the only instruction I gave him. Literally within 10 minutes, he had Desktop Server installed, and he had a WordPress website running on his local machine without any instruction from me. 8-year-old child. I actually have a video, I think the following weekend was WordCamp Milwaukee, and I had him there with me, and I had him demoing Desktop Server. And I have a video of him demoing Desktop Server at WordCamp Milwaukee, which was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Oh, that's a great story. I know part of what I try to do here in Santa Clarita is that I really want the new user to find tools that are easy to use and that won't discourage them from trying to accomplish.
Right.
So I know if you really want to, I think the term local development is daunting for some people, but if you have a tool like Desktop Server, you can get up and running. And hopefully today we'll show you another example. I know last week Bill showed an example with MAMP. We'll show you some examples today of just how easy it is to get started.
It is extremely easy, and it shouldn't be intimidating. Our whole goal every time we design or add a development to our software is to make it so that the onboarding process is so easy, but the back end is extremely robust so that you can grow with it. And that's kind of our whole idea with our software. So sometimes it might take us a little bit longer to push out a release, but that's because we don't want to break what's already working. We have about 60,000 installations of Desktop Server out there. And so what we don't want to do is break anybody's workflow when we push out our releases. So we test things beyond any reasonable amount of testing, and it takes a little bit longer, but we want to make sure that, you know, workflow is extremely important, and nothing causes more frustration than a broken workflow. So we focus very hard on being easy to onboard and easy to grow with as you grow as a designer or developer.
Awesome. Well, I'll turn back to Alicia before we let you go. Since you're the most veteran in terms of experience with Desktop Server, can you think of a question for Marc that we may not have thought of as users that he hasn't covered?
No. No, I haven't. I don't have a question right now.
Yeah, I think for me, the ease of use is why I wanted to have you on. So I would encourage you, if you haven't downloaded the free version, and again, I always say try the free version before you upgrade. And as you grow your business, you'll need the premium. And now you know that the service is there for you, so you can definitely use that product. Any other questions or comments before we let Marc go? All right. Well, thanks, Marc. Thank you
for having me.
I really appreciate it. And like I said, it was great when you were here on site in Santa Clarita. And like I said, I've known about the product for quite a while and I've used it. So it's definitely a good way to get started.
Yeah, well, we were happy to sponsor that one, and we look forward to being able to, you know, do it again in the future. So
awesome. But before I let you go, are there any releases or anything down the road, or what's the roadmap for
right now things are going crazy with both Desktop Server and WP SiteSync. I didn't talk about WP SiteSync because this is about local development, but WP SiteSync is our other product, which is what you use for synchronizing content between local sites and live sites, so that you can keep all your production still local once you're live. We have about 8 updates coming for WP SiteSync in the next 2 weeks. And Desktop Server, Steve has been working like crazy to do some pretty amazing things with Desktop Server. The release cycle on Desktop Server is a little bit slower because it is a compiled product. And as a compiled product, it's a compiled product that has extensions. So the compiled product, the core itself, takes some time to push out updates for, but we're constantly pushing out new extensions, which are those design time plugins that we're talking about. Yeah.
And then I did have another question. I'm sorry to interrupt. How do can folks work as a team using your product? So can they all work off of one local instance, or is that an option? You can, and that's if you are all within the same network, you can use the local sharing capability built within Desktop Server, which allows you to share your site locally within anybody on the network, and then they can access it. And then we also have a design time plugin which is the ngrok extension that allows people to be able to visit the site from wherever and do work on it. I'm not a big fan of a million cooks in the kitchen on stuff like that. And I was going to say, especially with access to your local server, that's not really a secure thing. Right.
if I were project managing a website, I think I would use the sharing capabilities on a limited basis, where people get to look but don't touch kind of things. But different people have their own workflows, and and that's what works for them. So, and of course, Desktop Server does work with GitHub and all that stuff too. So if people do their collaboration through GitHub and things like that, then it functions fine there as well. So.
Awesome. And I know you mentioned the add-ons or extensions. Are those is there a repository somewhere for those specific extensions, or how do you find those?
Those extensions are just included with Desktop Server Premium, so they're just there. Now, the other thing is, you brought up my 5 minutes with Marc video series, which I just started a week and a half ago, which I'm humbled to say has been the most engagement we've had of any of our videos, which blows my mind. But it tells me people have about 5 minutes and no more. I'd like to think it's because of me, but it's probably because of the information.
It forces you to be concise with what you're going to say.
Right. And I'm not very concise with what I have to say normally. But the developer plugins that I'm talking about, you can also, and there is a video on there, you can actually use some plugins straight from the WordPress repository and stick them in the DS plugins directory, and they will work as design time plugins. So things like Smush and other things that you don't really want to be messing around with locally, but you don't really want on your live server, you can throw those in your DS plugins directory. And I show you how in that video. So yeah.
Awesome. And so you do it once a week? Because I saw you said you've only been doing it a couple of weeks. That's a lot of 5 minutes in there already.
Well, okay. So my idea was I wanted to create a channel or a playlist, right? So that it could be on the front page, so that it would draw people to it. So I was a little bit aggressive to begin with, but yeah, it's going to be 1 to 2 videos a week. It's not going to be, so I did basically 5 in the last week and a half. And
okay.
Now that
I thought you were pulling all-nighters or something.
No, I pull all-nighters all the time anyway, but not just doing videos.
Awesome.
Because otherwise I would sound really tired in those videos. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, great. Well, folks, the link to that will be in the slide deck as well. So make sure you check that out. Thanks again, Marc. Thanks for spending time with us on Saturday to talk about Desktop Server.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
All right, folks. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to jump back into the slide deck, and then we're going to jump over and do a quick demo. So while we're transitioning, any other questions or comments on Desktop Server before we continue?
I was really happy to hear about that SiteSync. I didn't really know.
Oh, I know that's a new product.
I was gonna say, because right now I have a client where they've been doing stuff because of the COVID. They've been trying to sell stuff on the site, and they need a new homepage. So I'm kind of developing that, and I'm gonna have to cherry pick files, and it's just awful. I know I'm gonna miss something. But
I just want to say, SiteSync is not a new tool. We've just done a terrible job of marketing it.
It's still there.
It's actually been around for about 3 years, and Dave Jesh is the mastermind behind that. And he's the one that was at Peepso, that started Peepso. But I don't know how I got lucky enough to work with 2 of the best developers. I've been working in this world, in tech since I was 10 years old. These are 2 of the best developers I have ever worked with in my life. They are just amazing. And somehow or another, I got lucky enough to work with them. Yeah, WP SiteSync, we are constantly coming up with new extensions for that. And Dave is working really hard on it. And we have some other people working hard on it. And to get started, it's free in the WordPress repo. Just look up WP SiteSync and you'll get an idea of what it does.
Yeah, and I actually pulled up the site. And just another note, it'll be later in the slides, but this weekend, Memorial Day, there's a 20% discount on Server Press.
I forgot to mention that. Thank you, Joe.
Hey.
There is, all right, sales hat on. There is a 20% discount for Desktop Server and WP SiteSync this weekend only. Sale ends Monday. Hurry now. Don't delay. All right.
Awesome. Perfect timing. Yeah. So if you wanted to try it out and you wanted to try the premium product or to try WP SiteSync, make sure you check it out. All right.
All right. Thanks
So
again.
another option is, and there's sort of the new kid on the block. Local by Flywheel is a local development tool as well. They have a free download, and we'll take a look at that today as well. Their information is at the URL below. They also have a video channel on YouTube with a few videos there. They also have Zach Gordon, who's, I think he did Learn Deeply. I think that's what he's known for in the WordPress community. He's a JavaScript guy. He did a couple of videos for them as well. Here are some of the YouTube links, just like I provided for ServerPress and Desktop Server. Here's a couple of videos you might want to take a look at. And then I'm going to jump out, and it's going to be difficult to try to top what Marc talked about in terms of Desktop Server. But let me see what I can do here with Local by Flywheel. All right, so I'm going to try to share my screen here. Share my desktop. Okay. Okay, hold on a second here. Okay, there it is. All right. All right, can you see my desktop here, folks? I'm just closing screens here. So I've installed local. All right. It's a download from their site. And in order to create a new site, over on the left here, I'll show you the different menu options. It's a basic Q&A screen, like a onboarding screen. Then there's always there a pitch to try to get you to go pro, as well as a login. If you're on Flywheel, you can log into your site here. This next option shows you the number of local sites that you've created or you're going to create. If you have a site on WP Engine, and that goes back to what Marc was mentioning before, this product works with their mother company, Flywheel and WP Engine sites. But if you're not hosted there, then there's an issue. So that's one of the downsides to being with Local by Flywheel. They've also introduced sort of like an add-on community. It's similar to what Marc was talking about. These are additional add-ons that were built for their product that you can add as well. And then they have a help section. And then at the very bottom, there's a plus sign. And so say, for instance, you want to create a site. I need to redesign my site. So I'm just going to give it a name, Joe Simpson Jr. Then you also have some advanced options. It's a wizard that walks you through. It gives you a site domain name, the path to your site. You can actually change that if you needed to. And then at the bottom, and we'll talk about that in a minute, and Desktop Server has this as well. If you have a certain plugin set or theme set or features that you use a lot with your clients. So for example, if you design a theme and every client you work with gets that base theme, that saves you time, also increases your profitability. But with this tool, you can create what's called a blueprint. And again, in ServerPress, it has the same thing. And that is a certain set of, it's like a pre-installed WordPress with plugins, themes, all set to go. So you don't have to individually go through on each site you set up with this and install all the 7 themes that you use and install all the plugins that you use. You can use a blueprint and it'll install it quickly. All right, so that's an option there. And I'll show you how to create that in a second. Hit the continue button. There are a couple options here. I usually go preferred. You can do something custom and it gives you a few options there. Then you just create your username. And everybody can see this, yes?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then you just give it an email. And I know I was talking with Alicia earlier. We were talking about timing it to see how long it takes, because again, desktop server is quick to get up and get working. You also have an option to decide whether you want to do a WordPress multi-site installation. And then you click that and it goes through its process of creating a local environment. It's going to ask you a login for authorization purposes because you are making changes. Oops, wrong, sorry. All right. Then I can't see the top of my screen here. Let me see if I can scoot it down. And so it's, oh, okay. I think I have an issue with my site domain name here. But anyway, so it brings you to this screen here. Let's go ahead and take a look and see if our site is up and running. You just view site. Ooh, maybe it's because of the issue I had here. Let me see what that is. All right. And it looks like it gave me an issue at the top. So now that that's resolved, let's see if we have a site up and running. All right, so it spun up a site with the 2020 and you can begin working on it. I'll quickly go through the tabs here. You can log in through the back end. There's an admin button here that'll launch. And you'll use the username and password that we just created when I set it up. Also, if you walk down the tabs, you can see where your database is. You can also make sure that it has HTTPS as an option. And that way, when you send a link to your client to take a look at, they won't be freaked out by the this site is insecure error message. And then it also has some email capabilities. And at the bottom here, you'll notice also it has a live link option. And by clicking that, it's going to create a link that you can share. And that's, and again, Mark mentioned that earlier through ngrok. This link here will allow you to share it with anyone. So for example, I'm going to share it with everyone in this. Let me see if I can copy it. I'll see if I can share it in our Slack channel.
Or in this chat.
Yeah, I'm going to try to put it in the chat and see if everybody can open it. All right. But yeah, so that way, as you work on things, you can share it with your client. So for instance, if you worked on a new site design in local and you created it, you can share this live link and they should be able to jump in and take a look and give you some comments. So again, you can do most of the things that you need to do in terms of developing. Like I said, unfortunately, if you're not on Flywheel or WP Engine, you can't upload directly, so you'd have to work on a different solution. But this way, at least, you'll be able to build something locally and test it, and then you can physically move the files.
That link didn't give us the HTTP, or maybe it won't. I don't know. The one you put in the chat.
And I think when I clicked on it, it built it in the URL. So.
If you.
Okay. Okay.
You can also try right-click in one of the contextual selections. Might be copy link address.
Oh, yeah, it's not giving me that option,
Okay.
so unfortunately. So that's one of, yeah, so that's,
I think it's working.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm able to see it.
Okay, good. All right, so so again, this the great thing about WordPress is that a lot of these tools make it easy for you to jump in and do it. So so that's it. So again, you could spin up as many sites as you need. Over here on the left, once you've spun it up, you can clone it. So for example, if I wanted to use this install, if I went in and installed my favorite plugins, like a security plugin, a SEO plugin, a backup plugin, I can use this as my blueprint for all the other sites that I built by saving it as a blueprint, and then it would be an option at the beginning. So again, that's a productivity saver. It allows you to be a little more efficient and a little more profitable. So that's it. You can also start and stop the site. Actually, I have too many screens here.
Yeah, I see that.
By clicking in the upper right-hand corner, you could stop it there. So again, it functions similar to MAMP or desktop server, where it's actually a live server and all the things that you would do on your live server. You would do them here safely, and then you would eventually move them up, get them approved by your client, and then you can go ahead and move ahead with that. So that is
the work. Oh, yeah. Does the link only work when you're logged in and have the site turned on?
right. That's correct. So if I stop the site, it'll stop working.
I have a question. Have you clicked the database to see what it looks like? Because this was my big deal.
Okay, it looks
We
like
don't have a PHPMyAdmin.
okay, it looks like it has its own.
It's a weird thing. That's why you can't work with other people, other hosts.
So it looks like they have a tool called Open Ad Miner. So it looks like that the link to the database there.
It's very different.
Yeah. So I think they have their own.
Like you can't, like, before I found all-in-one migration, I couldn't export the database. Like that's why one of the reasons why I just stopped using it completely. I was like, I can't export my database. I don't even know. And I tried to find a workaround, and it didn't work out. That's one of the big things, and that's probably why you can only work with Flywheel and WP Engine.
Okay, cool. That's a great point.
Yes.
I mean, it looks like you can do SQL Pro, so I imagine you can do the MySQL workbench as well.
Awesome. It looks like Amy says you can use a command line to export the databases.
Oh, there you go. That's
or
cool.
export from WP admin dash. Thanks, Amy. And then also Dave shared a link, shared the link as well. Okay, and that was another question. Sonia asked, does this link only work when you're logged in? Yes. So for instance, I mean, I think that's a tricky question. If your site is running, so for example, right now, and over here you see stop site. If I press that, that link should stop working on the outside. So basically, when you shut your computer down, or if you stop the site, it'll stop working.
It
All right.
definitely has stopped.
All right. So I'm gonna quit out here unless there are other questions and go back to the slides. But again, you can see that both of these tools are pretty simple to get up and running. And again, I want to jump over to Bill for a second. So Bill, in terms of MAMP versus what you've seen today, is MAMP, if we went through the same process, how long would it take the average beginner to get into MAMP and spin up a site? Or do you feel like that's a more intermediate tool? Oh, let me make sure he's
Is he still here?
I think he,
Bill's muted as
whatever.
he speaks.
All right, Bill.
Bill, you're muted.
Mute me.
Okay, we can hear you now.
Mute me. Yeah. So MAMP and MAMP Pro are very different tools. MAMP, the free version, is quite manual, and you have to do a manual install for WordPress, which means I went through all the steps. It's a good learning process, I think, for anyone to know how to do that, because sometimes you get into trouble when you need to know how to do it. If you go to MAMP Pro and pay the whatever the fee is, I don't know exactly now, you can do a one-click installation. It sets up the database for you. You just need to put in some credentials, like the usual.
So I guess my question is, so do you feel like it's beginner level easy? Like I said, I felt both desktop server and local by Flywheel were really easy to install the desktop client.
Yes, I think they are.
Get up and running.
I definitely think they are. In terms of MAMP Pro, I think it's beginner level easy. You can just click a button, do an automatic install, type in some passwords and some usernames, and it does the whole thing. You don't have to create a database separately. As far as, and you can always drop plugins right into the folder, or once your MAMP site is, MAMP Pro site, either way is up and running, you can usually go online to just install them directly from wp.org or through the WordPress dashboard. Or as I say, you could drag them in, copy them into a folder.
What about you, Dave? What do you use to develop locally?
I have been using MAMP Pro for several years. I did sign up for local I really haven't used it that much, but I can see some use cases for that for some other stuff that I'm developing outside of central casting. But I like MAMP Pro because there's some features in there, like I can control what version of PHP it's actually using.
Right. Right.
You can also switch from Apache to Nginx if you wanted to as well. So you can a little bit more flexibility in targeting what your actual web server is.
And I guess the next, the logical next point for this discussion is talking about staging in terms of your hosting plans. And do you feel like we should take that into the next meetup, or should we sort of be done with this topic and move on to something else as a group? Like, how many folks use staging or have a plan with their host where they can stage?
I usually, my staging is a subdomain on a sandbox on my own server.
Okay.
So that my clients can look at the site at any time. There's a certain point where I put that up for them. We're not done, but we're like 75%. And so when they're going to start maybe helping with content and everything. And so that's what I do.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on what they do? Oh, I can't hear you. Scripting. Okay, I'm sorry. Repeat yourself. You were muted for a second there.
Yeah. So I'm using SiteGround. That's I guess now has staging on it. So before I launch officially. So,
and then I didn't want to put you on the spot, Anna. But with Green Geeks, what do you have staging as part of your plans, or is that more a different area from what you do as a community director?
Yeah, I'm not involved with that.
Okay, I didn't want to put you on the spot.
That's okay.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump back into the slides unless there are more comments on local development. And again, you see it's pretty easy to get up and running. So there's really no reason to be doing a lot of things on your live site unless you like to live dangerously and you're a cowboy. But
Which I'm doing right now.
Hey, Joe.
yes.
I do see that on local by Flywheel because that's what I use all the time. You can change the PHP version, and I thought I saw recently that you can change to Apache. I saw an email, but I don't see it. Maybe I haven't updated. I just got an email last week that said that you could switch from Apache to Nginx.
So as a Flywheel user, as a local user, did I miss anything or anything you wanted to add to what we looked at today?
No, I think it's all pretty simple for me. That's because I was using MAMP before the free version, and then I switched to this, and it all seemed pretty easy to me. And yeah, I've been using it since then.
Awesome. All right, let me jump back into the slides. We only have a couple more left, and then we could use the rest of the time to
I think it's locals using Nginx now, and they're adding the ability to switch to Apache.
Thank you. All right, and then of course last week we had Bill on to at WordCamp Santa Clarita. He presented this, and then he was kind enough to turn around in a couple weeks and do that presentation again. The video's up online at this link here, so if you need to grab it from the slides, go ahead and get that. Again, he talks about MAMP and Atom specifically in terms of your offline development environment, and that was very useful as well. In terms of prices, we already talked about that. These are some links for the downloads. Again, I like to provide resources to learn and as well as get in there and do it yourself. In terms of MAMP, they have a few playlists as well. They have tutorials on all of their products in playlist form. So if you like to do start to finish when you're teaching yourself or when you're looking at videos, they have that option as well. Here's a link to a specific playlist for their tutorial set. It's a set of 3 that walks you through from a beginner standpoint to getting up and running. And then I did a really rough tool comparison. Most of them, desktop and local have all the features that you really need. As we mentioned at the beginning, desktop server premium is $99.95 a year, but right now for this weekend, you can get 20% off of that. Flywheel is, they have 2 different flavors in addition to their free. They have a pro version as well as a teens version, and that addresses folks that want to work in collaboration with other members of their team, and that's $550 a year. And that seems like that would be more of an enterprise level tool. MAMP Pro is $79. And then the other features we talked about, it's great to have that blueprint feature to be able to spin up a site with all the installs and everything that you want ready to go with the click of a button. They both have that. You can deploy to a live site with both of them. All three have some sort of support, but both desktop server and local have communities that build additional functionality or allow you to chime in and get some help when you need it. And then I felt like both desktop server and local are easy enough for a beginner to use and get involved. I think MAMP is easy, but there may be some things you have to do with your system, or to me, it's not as user-friendly as the other two. But again, it started as a developer's tool, whereas I think these two came out with a specific goal of working with WordPress community. So
yeah, plus a beginner is probably not going to want to pay for something like that. Just
Yep.
to try.
Yeah.
So we'll have a free, out of the box, easy.
I know if you hear me at this meetup, I'm always free first. Don't pay until you kick the tires. So it's all good because you can start free. All right. And then this is the link for desktop server, which is $99.95, as I mentioned, with 20% off this weekend. And then here are the price points for local. Again, and they have some of their features. They allow you to do user management and a few other things, ticket support. So as you go up in terms of the price you pay, but again, I would say start with free, get into your, try to move your process into a local development environment, and then you should upgrade once you feel like you need to. Stick with free as long as possible.
Somebody mentioned something that Alex Vasquez is using, and I will guarantee you it's not beginner friendly.
Oh, what is it? Oh, is that the one Amy mentioned?
In the comments, I'm like, no, probably not.
Okay. What is it? Go ahead and share it.
No, it was Betty O, and it's not Betty, it's Jason. But he said Lando. He said you can say it, Jason. Your question.
Yeah, just throw it out there. It's Alex Vasquez, the WordPress Pasadena meetup guy. I asked him what he uses, and he uses Lando. Like Alicia said, he guarantees that it's not beginner friendly if he's using it. Yeah, because I've seen him use it, and he's using the command line and all kinds of stuff, and it's way beyond me. So
awesome.
Yeah.
The other thing too is that you're right, MAMP, there's nothing wrong particularly with MAMP at all, because MAMP covers everybody's use case. But if you're going to focus primarily on WordPress, and that's what I do. I don't really go outside of that. That's why desktop service is perfect, because it's like everywhere I turn, it's like screaming WordPress at me. It's very helpful.
Yeah. And I know when Bill was on, he had mentioned that it was a great learning tool for him as he's learning development. So it's good for those folks that want to grow their level, or they feel like they're not at beginner level. They're ready to step in.
If you're learning PHP or something.
I've got a question then, and it may be a good one for Alicia. So if I, let's say if I were going from a beginner to Alicia's level of super pro, and then I wanted to go from there to work at a big agency with 50 people who were using some massive high-end tool chain, what's the best product to go from that beginner part, learn something that will give me some process that will be better knowledge for jumping into the bigger agency that an agency is going to probably use, that's going to not be a point and click.
I would say with MAMP would be the thing to start with, if that's your aspirations. And only because like the agency might throw something at you that's not WordPress.
Yeah.
And if you're just working at an agency and your front end or something like that, what local server you're developing on is the least of their concerns about what you can do to do your job. And so they'll probably have their own thing or something.
Well, that's one of those questions nobody ever seems to ask or talk about is
that's a good question.
And Joe's focusing on, and Joe's working at probably a bigger shop too, where this may be an issue working with other people is there are more and more like low end hobbyist tools. And then I feel like there's a big bridge between those hobbyist tools and the more pro stuff.
Flywheel is
that
probably,
happy middle ground between the two, and nobody ever talks about that.
I think Flywheel's agency level, like that's why they have that price cut, the $550 one. Is you just bump up the level of it, and I will guarantee you that if I was an agency and I wanted to use desktop server in a certain way, I'd give them a call and they'd work with me and make it happen.
Yeah. Well, if you're an agency, though, you're probably using a
rolling your own
too.
Yeah.
And then you have to have GitHub. You have to know about Git. You have to know about all this other stuff involved if you're going to be in that arena. So like that, where you're hosting it, they might be happy you have desktop server. You got that out of the way, or whatever. And it's like, now get on Git. And now there goes 2 months of your time just trying to figure that out. Okay.
It's not. No, you could do it in about a week. You just have to like do it and play around and be serious about it. But it's, and that's what I tend to use more. I spent the time ages ago to do some of that, but sometimes I'm not sure if it was worth it or not. And even then, I still cowboy code on the side just for kicks to make sure it still works.
I think you jumped in late on the whole.
I know we told horror stories at the beginning on why you shouldn't, but at the beginning I also asked a question, and not many people raise their hands because I'm sure everyone does all those things that I mentioned not to, in a pinch or when you feel like you need to.
Well, yeah, I've got GitHub. I can back up and scroll back if I really need to, so it's there. But for small, quick little tests, I often skirt around the workflow I ought to use. But you won't see me go for a whole day like tinkering on something without doing a commit or a backup somewhere. So
awesome. So that's all I have for you today in terms of local development. And again, it's important that you have some sort of process to make sure that you're not living risky and being a cowboy or cowgirl out there in the wild, wild west. So are there any other questions before we move on? I know in the chat, hold on, let me see here. Oh, it looks like Amy shared some more information too. Oh, definitely. Sonia asked if I was gonna share the slides. I can put that back up really quickly so you can see. There's a URL.
There's also another cool thing about desktop server that I like is that you can change the color of the admin bar. It's normally black. So you can change it to bright blue, so you can distinctly know whether you have the browser open on the live site. You can forget, you know what I mean? And you can like be in there, you're like, oh no, I'm on the wrong one, because you're comparing the two. So they have this add-on, you can check it as you set up your site to change that top bar blue. So you distinctly know, like just at a glance, whether you're on the local site or the other one. That was helpful. But it does a lot of the same things that the Flywheel does, except for when I click database, I go to PHP My Admin. I go straight there. And that's what I like.
All right. So with the time we have left, we could possibly take a look at a couple of sites, but also one of the announcements I wanted to make, and the reason why I disappeared from the screen was I was going to try to make sure I got to all of our speakers and volunteers a copy of our t-shirt from this year as sort of a thank you. So I've been working with Green Geeks. They sent me this and I put on my no contact gloves. So we're going to include a shirt, one of their shirts. And these were going to be at WordCamp Santa Clarita. So we're going to try to get those out in the next couple of weeks. I did just get an image from our printer for our t-shirts. He's going to ship them to me. And then we'll get those out. So on a limited basis, we'll be sharing those in the next few weeks with members. So if you want to put your size in the chat, folks that are on our meetups will have an opportunity to get one of those. So with that, do we have any other comments on local hosting before we open it up to see if anyone has any other questions or comments they want to open up to the group?
I do have a question about this meetup coming up, or the word camp coming up this weekend. It's Kent, Ohio, or is it Kent, England? Can we tell? It's Ohio, right?
Yes, it is Kent, Ohio. Yes.
I've heard both. And I was like, wait a minute, because I'm going to Kent. I'll go to Ohio too, but.
Yeah, I know. They volunteer on ours, a couple of the organizers, so it is a Kent, Ohio. Yes.
Okay.
So. Awesome. All right. So, hold on. Let me see. I'm going to look through the chat while we're going here to see if there's any.
Oh, so the sizes? I heard that the Green Geeks one run large or something.
Well, Anna, why don't you address that as the community?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we have they tend to run smaller actually. So maybe if you're small, maybe get a medium.
Okay.
All right. And then, like I said, I hope I'll be able to pull out this chat and I'll have all that information. If not, I'll make sure I get it the next time I see you. All right. Looks like software people get up is easy and fantastic. Okay. Oh, looks like Bill. Are we losing Bill? Or okay. Software people. I'm a major beginner, but I've used MAMP and Flywheel. Flywheel interface seems easier for me. I had guidance using MAMP, but whenever I went back, it felt like I was fumbling around to get it up and running again. It would be easy for someone that does it regularly, though. GitHub is a nightmare. I put my website on GitHub. That was Sonia who mentioned that. All right. So I'm going to open it up to the floor. Did anyone want to share a question or something they're working on in WordPress with the group? A lot of times what we do, people share their website and we sort of give them some UX or some opinion on what we've seen. So we can do that as well in the next few minutes that we have here. Thanks, Alicia.
I think Script Tank had some, didn't he have some questions too?
Oh, well, right now
if there was enough time, we would address some of whatever he had to say.
Yeah, that's okay. Right now, I'm just on a coming soon mode. So,
so is there a live domain right now, or there's no site up at all?
Well, I had a Wix promo site, and I took that down. I just have like the, yeah.
You went from Drupal to Wix, and now you're coming to WordPress. Is that, or did you have some stops in between?
Well, I went from Drupal and just threw up a simple Wix, like this is what I'm all about. This is just a promo. I'm building it on WordPress, right? And then I finally yanked the Wix down and put the like a coming soon, just a one-page coming soon thing, right? And that's where it's at right now while I build it in the background, right? And staging it.
Okay.
So
so my first thing, and I'm going to throw it out to the group. What does the group feel about coming soon pages?
No.
Nope.
And there's a specific reason why. That's why I wanted to open it up.
My reason is there's an opportunity for the information to be on that page, even if it's a paragraph, to talk about what you have, and also to have an opt-in so you can collect emails so that when you're ready, you can have a list to send it to. The other one is, if you haven't done it right with a plugin, then it might be doing the redirecting, the 301s, the 302s, like with Google.
Yeah, it can hurt your SEO to have a coming soon page. So you probably want to get some kind of something up there. And like Alicia mentioned, like a simple paragraph about what your site's going to be in a contact form.
Video be talking about it.
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's what my Wix did. It had an email set up and the whole thing. On my coming soon, it's not just, well, it's a static page, but it describes what Script Tank's about, like a paragraph. Right? But that's a great idea, is to put the.
I mean, how many of us remember the under construction little icon? That was just.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you go to scripttank.com,
yeah,
it should take you to the This
Okay,
is basically static page.
Okay, tell me the
Script
name
Tank.
again. What's the name again?
Script Tank, SCRIPTANK, like Shark Tank with movie scripts. ScriptTank1T.com.
Okay, I see it here. All right, I'll just share it quickly. And then also, Chris mentioned that if anybody's building a personal website, he's co-hosting a homebrew website club meetup next Wednesday. So why don't you talk about that, Chris, while I'm pulling up the site here?
So it's a piece that's growing out of the indie web camp movement, and it's modeled after the late 60s, early 70s homebrew meetups where Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and gang all got together and built their own computers. So the new model version is, you know, groups of us get together. Typically there's 2 or 3 in Europe. There's almost always one in London lately. There's typically one in New York, and then there's a rotating one on the West Coast between Seattle, San Francisco, LA, and San Diego. So we've been doing them almost every week for the last couple of months. But it's literally people who get together, whether you're working on WordPress or Drupal or writing your own website from the ground up. People who are talking about what they've done, what they've built, showing and sharing little tidbits. So it's a lot of, and if you know nothing, you can go to one of these and somebody will help you put a website up and at least get you going. So it's, and I've probably learned more about web development from this group of people than any class you could ever take in a million years. So there are people who show up. This last week, the head of web standards from Mozilla was on the group. Kevin Marks, who was one of the, I almost want to say he was the chief technology officer for Technorati back in the day, but he also built and worked on QuickTime for Apple and is one of the biggest web developers on the planet. I've seen him sit and teach people raw HTML.
I'm looking around on the floor because I see a lot. You're dropping a lot of big names right now.
So, but it's literally, you'll sit and this last week there were maybe 10 people, and of them, you know, half of the group were some of the biggest serious coders you could ever meet on the planet.
It says no RSVP. You just jump in there.
Yeah, you could. The link should show up just like 10.
I saw it. I saw what they said. So okay.
In fact, actually, I think I want to say they're probably hosting it on Zoom. And this group, actually, somebody built this RSVP system and calendar system to do this specific thing. So if you want to download that as an open source software thing and play around for calendaring and RSVPing, it's somebody literally has built this thing specifically for this in the last 3 months. So
Okay.
Awesome.
But it's some fun technology, and they're also working at as a group over the last they're almost at their 10th anniversary. They have built and put together 3 W3C recommendations over the last decade out of this working group of people.
Oh, that's amazing.
We're just making interesting things for the web. So
oh, that's great.
That sounds cool.
if you are just a tinkerer or you want to know what's happening at the bleeding edge of the web, this is, at least in my experience, this is the place to play around. So.
And you said it's next Wednesday.
This coming Wednesday. We're starting to put it together. They just canceled they usually do a big annual camp in Portland at the end of June, and they've canceled it for obvious reasons, but we're in the midst of putting together an online version of that big camp, which probably will stay that same last weekend in June, but I'm waiting for a few more things to fall into place to make sure that happens the way we expect it to. But and they have a wiki, so if you're tinkering or hacking at something, you can go to the IndieWeb wiki or their chat think one of my favorite things is you can go into their chat and ask random questions, and there's a chat bot that will give you some pretty impressively, sets of documentation. So if you want to know how to set up a domain name, you can ask what is a domain name, and it'll direct you to a page to tell you how to do that. So
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
you
So
got
yeah,
a lot of resources.
so check it out on Wednesday, and what you're seeing on the screen, everyone can see the page. Yes, this is a coming soon page. So I threw it out to the crowd before. So we're against a coming soon page, or how would we tweak this so that while he's working on getting the site finished, how could this be more effective?
Well, I think a couple of suggestions would be to get an email collection set up on there.
Yeah, I don't know if you need to say coming soon.
Yeah, don't just say reserve your not
Membership.
yourself, but be the first to know, something like that.
Unless you've done some PR somewhere, or some magazine in the trade press is writing about this thing you're building, and you're expecting lots of traffic to the page, it's not worth it.
Well,
but if you have a lot of traffic, then
yeah, I went
put an
on
email trap
LinkedIn.
on it.
I had like 1,500, less than 1,500 connections on LinkedIn, and once I kind of promoted it, within less than a month, I went over 25,000 people on LinkedIn. So there's a big interest, and most of those are writers and actors and everybody else in the industry. So yeah, I'll eliminate the coming soon. And
to be honest, the page just needs a little. It's Hollywood. It needs a little more pizzazz. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Listen, glamour.
So in terms of the site itself, are you responsible for the graphics as well as the building, or are you working with a team, or is it just you?
Just moi.
That's how it usually is with them.
I've been working on it for a while, off and on, but every time I start to build it on a platform, the platform changes and it doesn't have the plugins, and now.
That's probably an issue. Is that logo an image?
What's that? I'm sorry?
The logo.
The script tank logo at the top.
Is it an image?
Yeah.
So that's not being picked up at all by Google at all, then even the name of what it is, unless you put it.
Oh yeah, Google. If you type in script tank, there's a whole bunch of pages on Google, and it's a trademark and all that kind of stuff. So, so basically, what you're saying is, do not put it as an image on the platform, but put it as text, so it picks it up as the word. Yeah.
Or at least have them both. Yeah. Both.
Right. Yeah. Which is what I had on the Wix, is I had it typed out, with font, and then, so I think it was picking up on that, but.
You can also put it in the alt description.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Which is always important from an accessibility standpoint.
Yeah.
Right.
So, but I've designed it in stages. So, I want to get the MVP basically up and running, but it doesn't all have to be launched at once, just sections, because basically there's a script uploading and downloading, or a streaming section, and then the funding section for the scripts, and then the production, once they go in for and that doesn't have to be even up, until things start rolling, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and a website's a living document. It's different from anything else. It's not a book. It's not a newspaper. Like, all that stuff is set in stone once it hits once the ink hits the paper. A website can always change, and you should you should really incorporate some sort of analytics so you know which pages people are viewing. I mean, you're always moving things around and experimenting with a web page. So don't think of it as, I got to get everything up at once. It can go up in stages, definitely.
Absolutely, yeah. Exactly. That's what we'll see.
Okay. Well, at least you got a start, and at least you left the dark side behind, right?
Yeah. Right. And I guess I should throw this shirt out.
What is the shirt?
Drupal.
Oh.
We'll just turn your camera off. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Let's not dunk on
To be
Drupal.
honest,
Dries is a good guy.
Drupal's not as bad. Drupal's used for a lot of sites that you don't even know, like Zappos is Drupal, and a lot of enterprise level nonprofits. But if you were wearing a Wix shirt, then we'd have a problem. We really would. Honestly. It's like
Well, I was looking at WordPress, and then the people at Drupal says, "Oh, it's capped. You can only have so many members on the site, and we're unlimited, right?" And then I says, because I'm thinking I want to be like Amazon and Netflix, and which is kind of what it's all about, right? And then I started looking after I went on Drupal, and they changed it from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, which is completely different. And then I saw, well, WordPress says that it can have 150 million people hitting on the site. It's like, should I worry about that number right now? I was like, no.
Yeah, you know what I think has happened? And I want to make sure you stay. It seems like you didn't get caught in this trap, but it's a very, very serious trap that people get in when they've not heard of WordPress. They end up on WordPress.com.
Instead right.
And so most people think that is WordPress if they've never done
right.
it. And so they think, oh, you're in that closed community, like straitjacket thing, and it's not. And I've had to pull people out of it, actually.
Yeah, I literally spent a couple months researching what platform I should use, right, to go into to build a social networking website. And then even though WordPress was probably my first choice, but then because of the way that the Drupal people were saying, that drew me into that. But then as soon as they went from Drupal to Drupal 8, it killed all the plugins. There's no upgrades to Drupal 8 and everything else. And it was just like, okay, I'm done. And then I went back to WordPress, which had, it's got a zillion plugins, and
45% of the internet.
So let's be fair. Drupal is a wonderful, lovely tool.
Yeah.
And it's a very serious tool, but I would say in the last 4 years, a lot of the hobbyist and mid-level and even small agencies have been kind of pushed out of it, and it's become a very high-end corporate tool that's almost exclusively now used by major web development agencies, and that's their day in, day out bread and butter. So the level of expertise to be able to use it as an entry-level tool has come up significantly at that 7 to 8 branch.
Right.
It's a phenomenal ecosystem. It's got some great stuff, but the problem is they have pushed out a lot of the small, mid-level, and hobbyist level people. So 5 years ago, you could go to a Drupal camp in LA and there would be 600 people. You go now and there's probably about 70, and all 70 of those people day in and day out are breathing code. Basis. And it's fine if you're building something as a single person shop and you don't have that background, it becomes a much harder tool to use. But they also have plugins and things. Typically, if you're playing at the hobbyist level or that mid-level, there's a Drupal fork called Backdrop CMS that's very WordPress-like, and it's been around for 4 years, and it's what I would call a stalking horse fork of Drupal. So it has taken a lot of the pretty, very usable UI, and it's gotten rid of a lot of cruft in the old core and put stuff. There are a handful of, and even in the WordPress world, you will spin up a WordPress site and there's probably 5 to 10 common plugins that you're just going to install on every WordPress site you ever build. And so they did that same thing, but in the Drupal world, they got rid of the old plugins or core pieces that nobody was using, and they put in the 10 or 15 things that everybody uses. So out of the box with that, you get a much faster, quicker start. But they've also been tracking small, subtle changes. So, and I'm sure there are many people who are not super happy with where WordPress.org is moving because it's a consensus-based thing. But as a fork of Drupal, they've been building in small, lovely UI features that people wish they always had. And then 8 months or 2 years later, Drupal decides, oh, that actually was a good decision. Let's do that. So they'll go take that code and push it up. And they do the same thing kind of back and forth, both from a UI perspective and a security perspective. And I almost wish there were something in the WordPress community that we're doing that with WordPress, because it's actually both made that backdrop CMS and Drupal have both become way better because of that dichotomy of the work that got made. But no, you know, it's taken a huge, it's come out organically, and it would take some huge shift for that to happen in the WordPress world.
I think the camel that broke my back with Drupal was the fact that I actually sent a couple of retainers to developers that were highly recommended from some people in Colorado, and then I never heard from them again. You know, so they took my money and ran. And so that was the point that I said,
It happen with anybody, though, to be fair. That, you know, but that's just a different community. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
God.
So I think, I guess the next thing is we'll have to see the progress. So you have to definitely come back in the future and show us.
Yeah. Because there's a marketing, that page should be marketing for you right now. It really should. When you're talking to the LinkedIn people, it's not marketing for you right now. In fact, if no one's heard of it, they will arrive at the page and wonder. So marketing for me personally is more about trust, and the trust is how professional does it look, even if it's a student on there. You know what I'm saying? Like, people can give you some tips and stuff and just change it up. But if it looked professional, only said one sentence, you'd be, and the sentence was compelling, you know, you'd be like, oh, I'm coming back for this. What? And then I was like,
it seems like when you introduce yourself, how you describe Script Tank, there should be on that page.
I would love it if it was a video, you talking about it. Or you interviewed different people who had written scripts, and like that they disappeared with their money. Their script got sucked into something in Hollywood, and I never saw a movie. And now I can't give a script back.
And what is the problem? Like you mentioned the problem that you're solving. Like you gave it to us in like an elevator speech. That elevator speech should be on your page.
That's a good idea.
Contact us for more information. That really should be what it's doing for you right now in the meantime.
Yeah.
Luckily, I just threw that up this week, so it hasn't even been up there that long. So
hey, well, that's what we do. That's what we do in the WordPress community. We help each other out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I'm happy I'm here, right? You know, because now we have one in Antelope Valley, but it never happens, right? Well,
I know that's a funny story that for another day. I know why it doesn't happen, but I'm not going to share that here.
I was gonna say Script Tank, because that's the only name I can see. But we know you could do better. You don't have to explain it a week ago. I know where you're getting at. We know that's on you.
Hey, Alicia, there was a question in the chat. I don't know if you answered it. It said, "What is the name to the plugin?"
Oh, you know what? It's a maintenance. I use one. It's called maintenance plugin. It's when you do a search. It's the first one that shows up, and the guys in the. They finally put that guy who's the coming soon worker to work. He's the icon on that plugin. That's the only place he needs to go. And so you'll see him first. And what you can do with it, unfortunately, this might embolden cowboy coding, but you can have that turned on and work on your live site and see the front of it while that's on.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
It's under the maintenance.
But this one comes with it's an easy way to throw a picture in, and also some other things. It has like CI, and so you can make it look a lot better. Yeah.
Good point. Yeah, I should do. I should actually have somebody else do the video instead of me. But
I think you should really. The reason why you came to this conclusion is you must have been talking to some of these script writers, right? You must know some of them.
Well, I'm in the industry, and I've talked to writers up the wazoo over years, and that's.
If you could get some of them, even a written testimonial, that page could have wonderful testimony about why it's important to them to have their script seen by more than just some guy in some mogul at a desk and who's going to say yay or nay. And
Yeah.
I would, if I was reading a lot, because I write scripts. You know, when you told me about it, I was like, oh yeah, that was really a cool idea. And
Thank you. Yeah.
and I'm like, that was a shot.
Well, and I do have testimonials even on LinkedIn from people that have said this is, you know, such a great idea because otherwise I never get my script. You know, I've got people from China, from Africa sending me scripts, all around the world sending me scripts right now.
So
You know?
I just thought of an idea. So have them send you their own video testimonial about why they.
Yeah.
And then put that together.
Edit it together, right?
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Oh, that's a good idea. Excellent. Well, thank you very much.
All right. Hey,
I'll hire you on my team.
good to see you. All right. Well, folks, unfortunately, I'm late for my speaker's call for WordCamp Kent, so I'm going to have to finish this conversation. But thanks everyone for joining us today. Just a note: we're going to meet again in June. We're going to have a speaker talking about an advanced topic, but we'll also have some time for Happiness Bar. If you're into the page builder thing, we have our Elementor meetup next weekend up here in Santa Clarita. And we'll just go forth from there. If there's a topic you want to hear us talk about, or I can try to get a speaker to come in and speak on that topic, I'd love to hear that as well. Again, I know Sumner is speaking at a meetup next week. I think, Amy, you want to talk about your meetup next week?
Sure. If you all are available on Thursday at 7, WordPress LA is having Sumner give a talk on accessibility. It's going to be awesome. I hope you can join us.
Awesome. And
you
Sumner
put-
is also doing a big conference on accessibility next week. Sumner, what are you going to talk about there?
Well, it's going to be different. The one that I'm talking about on West LA with Amy on Thursday is going to talk about traps and trolls, things that are going on in the alleged accessibility compliance area that can get you in more trouble than you can possibly imagine. So it's really focused to designers to help you stay out of trouble. On Saturday is our kickoff, and it's going to be after Joe's meetup on Elementor. We're having our kickoff event for San Fernando Valley, and it's focused on accessibility. So the first one is going to be the intro to accessibility and things that designers should think about. After that, we are inviting in people who are pillars in the accessibility community, people that are deeply involved in accessibility, and such companies as Nobility, who a lot of people don't know who they are, but we just completed a 4-day Access You educational format on all sorts of components of accessibility, how to make your forms accessible, your tables accessible, your animation accessible, every single part. So we're going to not rely upon as much, I'm not going to present everyone in our accessibility meetup. I'm bringing in people that you may have never met before, people who speak and educate at the highest level on web accessibility, including attorneys, so that if you've not been able or didn't know about these accessibility and technology conferences, we're bringing these speakers into you. We're going to have one time a month there'll be a speaker, and one time a month will be hands-on work on people's websites step by step. So that's our objective, and I'm partnering with Jennifer, who's on this call, and Ron, who's not here today. And it's been an interesting journey thus far getting this scheduled. So
Awesome.
two fun things happening.
Well, congrats again. You're awesome. And like I said, when I first saw you speak, I was like, she's got to speak at WordCamp Santa Clarita. So just to see where you've come, I mean, you were already there, but I just saw you. But that's pretty impressive. You're doing some great work.
Santa Clarita was the first WordCamp I'd ever been to, participated in, and Joe, you got me hooked. Now, you know, I'm very excited. I'm actually a volunteer for the upcoming U.S. WordCamp, so
awesome.
Yeah, you just can't get rid of me yet.
He's also Sumner's a regular at my Santa Barbara meetup too. So
and all these things are great things. If you're beginning in WordPress, you need to know about accessibility. You need to know how to build a site in a proper environment. So we're always trying to provide like the basic tools, and you know, all the different meetups have different flavors. Some are more advanced. The workshop version or the lab version that Alicia does is great because you actually look at a topic and you actually get to see what they're working on, and people actually work to figure out the problem. So there's all these different ways to figure out. So if this isn't your flavor, there's a meetup out there that's perfect. Or in Pasadena, where I met Bill and Jason, that's a great meetup as well. And they have a designer, or do they still do, I know they still do the developer version, but they have a couple of different flavors also. So, so with that, I'm gonna wrap it up. If there aren't any other comments or questions, I'm gonna jump on this other call.
All right.
And hopefully I'll see you.
Much, I really appreciate it.
Oh, good. Thanks for coming, everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Joe. Have a good one.
Have a good one.